Welcome to the Bell Gossett podcast, live from the 2020 AHR Expo. I'm your host, Amanda Holloway, joined by Griffin Goda, and throughout the show, we'll have some fantastic guests and topics to share with you in this series, including several of our manufacturers, reps, and Xylem experts. You'll get insights into the trends they're seeing in the HVAC and plumbing industry. Enjoy the show. We're here at AHR with Dave Everhart and Dan Watkins from Bornquist. Why don't you guys just introduce yourselves and what you do for Bornquist?
Hi, I'm Dave Everhart. I've been with Bornquist for a long time, and I'm the president now.
I'm Dan Watkins. I've been with Bornquist less than Dave, 18 years, so that'll put it in perspective a bit. And I'm the HVAC sales manager.
Yes, Dan could be my son.
Oh, gosh. So how long have you guys been Bell Gossett reps?
We've been reps since 1937.
Okay, so one of the first?
We were one of the first spin-off organizations. Our founder, George Bornquist, was originally working with Bell Gossett and then spun off to be a rep firm. I think we're the second or third official B&G rep.
Wow. That's pretty great. And you're based out of the Chicagoland area, right? That's your service area, basically?
Yep, Chicago area, and about a mile and a half from Bell Gossett.
Yeah, so from the
we're neighbors.
Grove, facility, for sure.
Right, we take care of the greater Chicagoland area, and we actually have two offices. There's our office in Chicago, and then we have an office in the Quad Cities, more specifically in East Moline. And that's our Sandburg operation, and they cover the western part of the state, as well as going further south and into the northwest corner.
There's some pretty, Chicago skyline is pretty famous. There's lots of iconic buildings there. What are you seeing as sort of as the trend in Chicago as time goes on in terms of what people are looking for in their buildings now?
They're looking for efficiency, but also to be unique. So not talking specific about HVAC market, but just the buildings in general. Chicago has a skyline, right? So, people when they're building a building, they want to create something that's going to be unique and stand out and, be identifiable in that skyline.
Okay.
And a lot of those buildings are built with a design-build mentality, so it's not something that an engineer goes and lays out the project and covers all the details. Instead, they'll start the project, and then they'll hire the contractor to do a lot of the engineering and finish up the project. And speed of construction is very important because there are so many projects underway at the same time.
You think that trend is gonna continue in 2020 in terms of just like the construction market is exploding? And
I think it's going to continue. The design build that Dave mentioned, that's kind of ramping up more and more. I mean, we used to see it was all very traditional, plan and spec. Jobs would get designed, go out to bid, contractor would get awarded it, and they would install whatever was put on the drawing. And now it's more and more they're pulling contractors in on the front end, having them work with it, and they do a lot of the design work, and it's trending more and more design build versus the traditional plan and spec method.
So how does that change what you do for a certain project?
Well, we've always worked really well with the engineers, getting them to schedule our equipment, specify it, and back when plan and spec was kind of the way it would go, worked out well because a lot of contractors, they just look at what was on the drawing, that's what they bid, that's what they'd put in, because now they don't have any responsibility, right? They said, I installed what you told me to, and if it doesn't work, it's not our problem. Well, now that contractor is becoming the engineer of record, right? That's what design build essentially means, is engineer kind of does a preliminary design, but now the contractor is taking over. They're going to do the final design, and they're actually stamping the drawings as the engineer of record. So now they don't really care as much about what's on that drawing to begin with because they own it. So if they didn't like that, they're gonna change it and do what they want. And so now the focus is a little bit more on the contractors and their in-house engineering. right? We got to work with them to make sure that once they take apart what an engineering firm put on the initial plan, that they're taking it apart and still applying it to products that we carry.
And how has Bell & Gossett sort of helped support that, help support you in that endeavor in terms of going out and working with the contractor differently?
Well, B&G's done a lot of support with their Systemwize software to make it easier for everybody to use. It's a piece of software that's constantly changing and getting better, and giving people the ability to look at equipment selections from a different way. And you don't necessarily have to be an expert to interpret the information. It's all laid out very nicely. All the CAD drawings are accessible, the Revit drawings, that sort of thing. Also, B&G continues to develop new products. Here at the show, we have the double volute 80 series pumps out at the booth. We're also talking about a lot of other exciting developments with smart pumps, integrated technologies, and new ideas about way things might continue to develop.
Okay. Maybe just some examples of some recent projects that you've worked on that have had either like an interesting set of challenges that you've had to overcome, or something that's you're real excited about, a little bit different.
Well, I guess I can start. I know I've worked on a couple projects that are very interesting. Everybody knows the Sears Tower, Willis Tower, whatever you want to call it, tower. We still call it the Sears Tower in Chicago, and probably will forever. But they recently did a remodel of the Sears Tower, so they're completely changing the bottom part, the pedestrian part of the tower, to make it more pedestrian friendly, give it more retail outlets. They're remodeling spaces within the building, upgrading a lot of the old equipment to make it more efficient. And we provided all the pumps in that project. And it's just now starting to kind of get going. So if you listen to the podcast and you come to Chicago, go to the Sears Tower, stand up in the glass booth so you can see what it looks like to be 70 stories in the air. And then walk around the building and enjoy the snow melt, because it is Chicago. You should see at least that part.
We'll have to do that.
One interesting one that I'm in the process of working on now is a data center project.
Okay.
So, the Midwest is kind of a big data center hub, where there's a lot in Illinois and close by. And so this one, we've sold a couple pumps, plate and frame heat exchanger from Bell & Gossett, where they're using Lake Michigan water to cool down the computers. So we've got pumps that are pulling water from the lake, running it through a heat exchanger, and then running that water to all their equipment to cool everything down. So it's a little bit different.
It's pretty interesting.
And this is just the first part. There's I believe 7 phases to it. So it's just as the data center continues to expand, they're just going to keep growing and adding more like stations of pumps and heat exchangers to expand.
So using your local resources.
Yep. So but there's a lot of challenges involved when you start doing that, because Lake Michigan water is not the cleanest all the time, and then the temperature swings. So it's pretty tricky in how you got to get the water from a certain depth to make sure it's cold enough, and you got to filter it to make sure the pumps are okay. So it's a lot going on with it.
Yeah.
It's also kind of cool because B&G reps all have an organization called the FHRA, Fluid Handling Rep Association, and this project was actually engineered out of the Atlanta area. So we were working with the rep out there, James Pleasance, in order to kind of put a whole package together, even though the project is here in Illinois. So we actually worked together on some things where they would have a product line we didn't have, or vice versa, and the whole project came together to get successfully installed.
Oh, that's nice. You guys are in the airport renovation bandwagon as well, right? Because O'Hare's undergoing some major upgrades right now. So I feel like that's been happening for several years already.
I feel like O'Hare's always got something going on.
They do. The last project we did was a central plant upgrade.
Okay.
And it really kind of revolved around the upgrade of the cooling towers. There are Marley cooling towers there. That's another line we handle. And so while they were doing that, they also changed the chillers, they changed the pumps themselves. So we have some, I think, 1,200 horsepower VSC series pumps down there.
Wasn't it something like 40 or 48 pumps in total, all VSXs?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of pumps. And so now, the new Terminal 5, I guess they're going to call it, even though we have a Terminal 5.
The new Terminal 5.
Right, but there's going to be a new terminal going in, and that'll be kind of a substantial project. And also, I think American Airlines recently updated their terminals, and so there was kind of work going on there. And then another job we're hoping to participate in, we haven't heard anything officially yet, is the Obama Library, because that's going on the south side of Chicago, and kind of a opportunity zone, and we're hoping that it kind of expands and enriches part of the neighborhood down there, which is definitely has a huge long history in Chicago, but only recently maybe a more hopeful history.
That's good. That is good.
So because of your proximity to Bell & Gossett and Morton Grove, and also your longevity as a rep, how important is education and continuing education to Bornquist in terms of you two just personally, and then from a company perspective as well?
Well, it's incredibly important. I mean, we have a huge advantage over other B&G reps,
sure,
but even our competitors, because the Little Red Schoolhouse is literally in our backyard. I mean, it's it's right down the street,
right?
And so we can send customers there, because our customers, they don't have to fly in, they don't have to get a hotel, they can just go there for the day and go home, right? So we always have a pretty good contingent of customers for the Little Red Schoolhouse. I mean, we get people constantly asking us, all right, when's the next schedule coming out? What do you got? We want to send people. I was just looking at the list the other day, and we have like 8, 9, 10 people signed up for every single class.
Wow.
And it's all our customers, right? And we do send our employees to some of them, when they need certain training, but it's been going strong for years, and hope it continues. It's a great resource.
Yeah, that was actually a design build project that I did with one of my local contractors, F.E. Moran. And so they were approached because Mike McCombie, the president of F.E. Moran, had been a president of MCA, a president of ASHRAE. And so we invited their company to come in because we were really trying to design a building that looked as much as possible like a commercial project, when in fact it's not. So it presented a lot of unique challenges, kind of scaling everything down, trying to present all the technologies that B&G offers in pumps. You'll see pretty much one of everything in the mechanical room there. I made sure of that. As well as other products like boilers and cooling towers and things that are truly representative of the systems, because although we talk a lot about pumps, we really focus on systems.
Sure. So you guys probably use it, the Little Red Schoolhouse, going to the classes and kind of in the more traditional way. We've been talking to a lot of people today where they're trying to find new ways to reach people, through YouTube videos or online webinars and stuff like that. But it sounds like you are still getting kind of the essence of the Little Red Schoolhouse.
Right. And like I said, because we're lucky to be local.
Right.
It's a big difference between a podcast or a webinar versus physically going there and touching it and seeing it. Because I could explain all day with PowerPoint slides how an expansion tank should be on the suction side and what happens if it's not. But when you take someone into Little Red Schoolhouse and they've got a tank valve to both sides and they can flip a valve and say, well, here's what happens. And everyone goes, oh, now I get it. And you're like, you've been in the industry for 5 years. And just now because you finally saw it.
It's just that 1 minute that clicks in.
Yeah. And it's, I've had used it for private classes, right? I've gotten a hold of the schoolhouse and said, hey, I've got, an engineering firm or a contractor that wants to do a specific class. What day are you free? And, they're more than accommodating. We come in, have maybe, 7, 8 people and do our own little private class. And it's fantastic.
Cool.
That's not to say that we aren't doing the other things, because communicating with customers is one of the biggest challenges we have as our customers continue to change. We renovated our website. We have a common tab on there for all the manufacturers, sizing softwares that we represent. We are more active on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page. We're actually hiring a marketing person for the first time.
Oh, that's exciting.
To help us reach out to people. We're trying to do more and more education for all the product lines that we represent. We find things are changing faster now than they ever have before. And as a relatively large rep firm, it's a real challenge to stay nimble with all those things.
Sure. So then in light of all of that, are there any recent Bell & Gossett innovations that have really supported you in that way? So like we talked about Systemwize earlier, but any other products or services that you think have been instrumental in kind of helping you stay abreast of that ever evolving?
Well, we're seeing a few things under the broad description of communication. If you go to Bell & Gossett's website, you'll see that there are more and more non-schoolhouse related educational programs that are available to look at online. More and more of the products are becoming smart products that often offer, say, Bluetooth communications. You guys are coming to the show and doing the podcast with us so we can tell our story. B&G continues to help us out.
But have you found it, you mentioned it's tough to stay nimble, but even something like being active on LinkedIn, I guess, can you expand on why that's challenging, or how that has kind of pushed you in a different way than, not you, but as a company? What has it made you think about in terms of like, what do we have to put on LinkedIn, or why are we doing it?
I think a lot of it is just getting exposure to those customers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at it now and there's commercials everywhere. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are on how many messages people see every day. It's thousands. And so it's just getting out there, anything we can post. I mean, it can be as simple as, we're at a job site and saw a pump installed and snap the picture and post that, just to have our customers continually see, our products and Bornquist and Bell & Gossett. Mm-hmm. So it's just in their mind with all the other thousands of things, right? It can kind of keep it in the forefront.
Mm-hmm. And to me, and that's probably because I'm an old guy, is, I'm thinking about the appropriate balance of content. Because if I were somebody else, I wouldn't want to hear from me or see my posts on LinkedIn every 5 seconds. I would want to see it maybe once a week with some meaningful content that I would look forward to seeing, as opposed to pictures of my cat, or something like that. I don't have a cat, but if I did.
Right.
So, I think the important thing is getting meaningful content to the people who are following you, so they don't tune you out. Because just like annoying robocalls, how often do you just not even answer your phone anymore because that contact isn't in there and you're just going to let it ring through. So, we want our message to not just ring through.
On our show, In the Field with Gould's Water Technology, the latest series covers tips and trainings for small business owners. Listen to all 5 episodes of the Small Business Toolbox series wherever you get your podcasts. So what kind of advice would you give somebody? So presumably this marketing person that you're looking for, this candidate, trying to get into this industry, it can be a challenge just because of the complexity of it, right? Technologically and so forth. What kind of advice do you have for somebody who's trying to get into this industry, start a career here?
Well, construction, if we want to call it construction, as an opportunity, is a huge market, and construction means the same thing as like manufacturing or education or any other broad category you want to present. So you can be in construction and be in sales. You can be in construction and be in engineering. You can be in construction and use your hands and do pipe fitting. You can be in construction and do marketing or advertising. You can be in construction and be in manufacturing. So there are all sorts of opportunities within construction that there would be in other industries. What I think makes construction is a little different is that a lot of the people in construction ended up coming in at an entry level, right? Learning things the hard way, and then progressing to, senior positions in the industry. Sometimes with very impressive educations, sometimes without, that component, street smarts, if you will. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity for upward mobility, if you will, within the construction industry, because you don't need to have graduated from Harvard to get respect.
Right.
Did either of you graduate from Harvard?
No, I do own a baseball cap from there.
We respect you.
That's as close as I get.
No, that's a relatable message that you said. How do you see the industry changing in Chicago in this year or coming years? I mean, we've talked about DOE 2020 a lot today too, but just anything that sticks out?
I'll let you take this one.
Oh boy. So I'm actually looking at a lot of things that are sort of large trends that are, I guess, threats and opportunities in our market at the same time. And the biggies, I guess, one of them is decarbonization. There's a lot of willpower right now toward making our planet survivable for the near future, and burning fewer fossil fuels in the process. And so Chicago is one of those cities that has some goals out there in order to be carbon neutral, or at least reduce their carbon footprint. So engineers design their buildings to still be usable 20 years from now. And so we see electrification in those buildings being a bigger and bigger deal. Another aspect is shortage of skilled labor. Our education system sort of evolved to the point where the successful outcome for a high school student was to go to college. It wasn't even necessarily to graduate from college. It was just to go to college. And so a lot of the education programs that were in place for people with more practical skills were kind of left behind. And the baby boomers like me, as we age out of the industry, a lot of the people who are skilled laborers are leaving the market now. And our education system, at least not traditionally, isn't preparing a lot of those people for work. So I actually sit on an education council in Evanston, Illinois, where I live, and we're trying to connect with people in high school so they come out of high school as better candidates and easier to educate to the next phase of whatever it is that they're looking for. And then finally, modular construction.
Okay.
So modular construction is kind of building a building with Lego blocks almost. And these rooms or sections come out with carpet and heating air conditioning systems and paint on the walls and kitchen appliances and everything, and they just drop into place like Lego blocks to build larger buildings. And I ask everyone, I'll ask you, how many of you are wearing handmade clothing? You got any handmade clothing?
I don't even know.
I wouldn't know. Maybe I own one item that might
Maybe
be
some
handmade.
jewelry that's
Yeah.
handmade. Well, our construction process largely, at least conventionally, is called stick-built construction. And that's where we take all little pieces, like pieces of wood, and we put them together to make the walls and the roof and the shingles and the siding, and even, put the carpets in one at a time and everything else. And we do that in certain order, right, according to the trades. Modular construction is where they do all that in a factory, and then they move all those things to the job site, and they crane those completed modules into place, and they have, buildings that can be erected with higher quality control standards over a shorter period of time, with less exposure to safety risk, with less exposure to risk like theft.
That's really interesting. I would think that the quality because there'd be, less people involved to see, to check things out at every stage. It's just
But they can do better quality control because it isn't a factory, right? So it's repeatability. Where you have the same guy doing the same thing at each stage in the process, right? I think it's Henry Ford in the Model T.
Yeah, I suppose,
right?
But I also just, in my head, I equate quality with the handmade, like really double checking, obviously there's processes in the factory that
not every building
result in
is suitable for modular construction. For example, if you need to put space in that needs to be reconfigurable, then modular construction isn't the way to go. If you're installing large open areas like the one we're sitting in now, modular construction isn't necessarily appropriate. But our hotel room, that would be a real good one. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you see buildings that are maybe 80% modular and 20% stick-built construction. So they do the open areas like this, and then they move on and they build the part that's repeatable in a factory.
Interesting.
It makes sense why that would be appealing in a city like Chicago when you're building up a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the challenges that modular construction had was kind of fighting the unions, right? Because now you're saying it's not built in the field by union people, right? We're going to build it in a factory somewhere. Well, in Chicago, they have Skender, right? They have a factory in the city that they're using union laborers in the factory to build the modular pieces. So they've sort of addressed that concern. So now the unions are like, this is fine with us, right? So that's a big game changer.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It also helps the unions with diversity for their own workforce, because a lot of the skilled labor or baby boomer people, are not very diverse. They're kind of what you might expect, stereotypical in a way. And so now, if the people who work in that factory are from the neighborhood, because this particular factory is in an opportunity zone, you get a more diverse workforce. Advantages that are not just inside of the building.
Sure.
So who makes the decision to use modular versus the stick-built construction?
Typically the owner or general contractor would, at this point. It's still not a prevalent method.
Sure.
But if you look at how many people were wearing handmade clothing 100 years ago and how many people are now, you'd have a very different answer.
Sure.
I remember my mom made my sister jeans one time and she was horrified. She was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
That's the thought that counts.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up here, just wanted to, we made an announcement earlier today about the Watermark 2020 program, and it's important at Xylem to start to spread that message even further. And I know that the Bell Gossett manufacturers reps have really kind of picked up that challenge into helping solve water in the communities. And so just want to get your thoughts on that announcement, if you're what you're looking forward to in terms of the year ahead.
Well, we were one of the first manufacturers reps to participate in a Watermark event. So we went, I think we started like at a Buddhist temple, which is on the near north side of the city. And then we were carrying water, which replicated the journey of African children, mostly women, who would be responsible for going to get the water and walking back. So it was like a 3-mile walk, that we walked to the lakefront, and like a 3-mile walk back, and we had to carry water the whole time, and I couldn't keep it on my head like I think they do. But we were walking, and to me, certainly understand the need for clean water, and I absolutely support that. But to me, the remarkable thing were the things that were sort of peripheral to that. For example, I don't think people would know that because the young women in the African villages are going to get the water and it takes a long time, they miss out on their chance to get educated. They don't have time for school anymore. So it's very interesting to me. There's the obvious, clean water, and then there's less obvious, education. And there are other factors as well, but I think that was really the lasting, impact to me so far. And I know that locally Bell Gossett does some river cleanup things and lake cleanup things, and I would imagine that would be the next thing that we would participate in once it gets warm enough that you can pull the garbage out of the ice.
Yeah.
Right, that's the first thing.
So that should be sometime in mid-July, basically.
But that's cool. I mean, you guys have been into this even before, as Xylem has ramped it up on their end, the watermark program. Bornquist has kind of already been ready to go with that.
Yeah, we learned about it first when we were at the FHRA meeting, that previous rep association that I mentioned, and Xylem brought out a replica of the water tower that they use to do filtration and water supply for some of the underserved communities, they go visit. And so we got to actually, get on the bike, to operate the pump to make the whole thing work. And we helped erect the tower, and Ken Napolitano was there, and all sorts of other exciting people, to learn about more about the watermark. And so when we got home, we wanted to support that as best we could.
Sounds like you're already doing some awesome stuff, and we look forward to a great rest of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking us.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
The Solving Water podcast is produced and distributed by Xylem, a global water technology company of more than 16,000 employees committed to solving critical water and infrastructure challenges worldwide. Stream, download, and subscribe